Why do we devalue ourselves? Well, most of the time, we don't notice that we're doing it because when someone else devalues us, we feel it. It's drama or abuse. We feel like a victim and that there's a perpetrator or something out there to blame. But when we do it to ourselves, we call it facts. Nature makes no mistakes, and your symptoms are no exception. Welcome to Mind Over Symptom, where we uncover the deeper pattern. The unresolved self-devaluation stories in our psyches create the underpinning for every relationship problem we have because we're unknowingly trying to relate to the world in a way that will compensate for these feelings. But we rarely notice ourselves even doing self-devaluation in the first place because we don't see the self part of it. We don't see our own contribution to the devaluation. It really feels like devaluation, like anything else we don't like, such as illness, any kind of symptom, or a problem of any kind, comes from out there. It feels like germs go up our nose and make us sick. It feels like that annoying person over there is making us feel angry. It feels like the bad economy is preventing us from having enough money to do all the things we'd like to do. So maybe we recognize that we feel less able, less free, like we're not allowed to have, do, or be what we want to have, do, or be. But it still feels like there's something out there or something in the physical world that's preventing us from having, doing, or being what we want. It feels like someone or something else is doing the devaluing, and we're just the victims of that. So the first reason we devalue ourselves is that we have no idea we're doing it. It just really feels like the devaluation is coming from somewhere else. But all devaluation is self-devaluation. Because in order to feel like we are weaker or in a lesser position than what we'd like to be, or to feel like we're in a stronger or greater position than someone else, there has to be a relative valuation going on inside our own psyche. Now, even if someone else appears to be devaluing us, or even if we're devaluing somebody else, to the psyche, it's always self-devaluation. There would be no reason to judge otherwise. The second reason we rarely notice ourselves doing this is that we don't recognize the devaluation part of it. We don't correctly identify devaluation when it happens. The difference between valuation and devaluation is really important. Factual valuation is actually a necessary survival skill. We constantly make judgments about value. We have to decide how to expend our precious energy supply. We evaluate whether something is likely to cost us more energy than it will earn for us. That kind of valuation is not devaluation. Devaluation is fictional. What I mean by that is that it's based on a story we're creating from our feelings, not from facts. It's a comparison between our story about our imaginary self and our story about someone else's imaginary self. And the whole thing is happening in the psyche, not in reality. For example, we can judge that this item has more weight than that item. That's a factual valuation. 3 is more than 2. 10 is fewer than 20. We can also judge that one color is darker than another or that one contains more red than another. Again, that's a factual valuation. We can even do this with human-made law. We can judge that a set of actions adheres more closely to an agreed-upon law than not. Or that someone knowingly violated an agreed-upon law based on evidence and testimony. This is also the kind of thinking we do in proper scientific process. We set a hypothesis and then we test things. We then judge that under certain controlled circumstances, we'll see more of this phenomenon and less of that phenomenon. And again, that is a factual valuation. We're observing reality. But it would not be proper scientific method, for example, to set up a vague theory and then condemn anyone who doesn't believe it. That would be devaluation. It wouldn't be factual to claim that some people are good people and some people are bad people based on their belief system or their personal lawful choices. It wouldn't be factual to say that the color red is not as worthwhile as another color. It wouldn't be factual to say that 10 is better than 20. It wouldn't be factual to say that 3 is more useful than 2. And the difference is these kinds of judgments aren't based on facts. They're based on feelings. And those feelings come from a fictional story inside someone's imagination. And that's an example of devaluation. And while it may look like a devaluation by others, biologically speaking, the people doing it are actually devaluing themselves, because all devaluation is self-devaluation. It just isn't true that I am of lesser value than a medical expert, the head of the World Health Organization, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Elon Musk, Oprah Winfrey, Kim Kardashian, or Mahatma Gandhi. Perhaps I'm less clever, perhaps I'm less pious, perhaps less successful in some specific objective way. But if the value is measured by how I feel about it, it's not value, it's devaluation. True value is physically measurable. Value based on feelings is not measurable, and it's not a value, it's a devaluation. So our value as an individual cannot be greater or lesser than someone else's. It's also not factual to say, my body doesn't work. It might feel like that's true, but there is no logical fact-based evidence for that statement. In fact, there's ample proof of the opposite, because if your body didn't work, you wouldn't be able to listen to or read these words. Any idea that isn't based in measurable facts is a fiction. It's a story. So we want to change our statement from my body doesn't work to I feel anger because I have a story that my body doesn't work, or I am scared that my body doesn't work. Now we're stating objective facts instead of subjective feelings. So that's an explanation of why we can self-devalue all day long. We're not noticing that the valuation we're doing is actually devaluation based on feelings and the fiction created from those feelings. And we don't notice that all devaluation is self-devaluation. Now, our global civilization shares a basic mythology. It's the story of separation between humans and nature, or God. In Western Abrahamic religions, and even in atheism, it takes the form of the story of a fall from grace. In this story, we're cut off from the source of our energy and life. In GNM terms, that is called existential isolation. The story is that when it comes to the source of our energy and our life, we're not part of it or entangled with it in any way. It's a different thing than us, and it's over there and separate, and it may not even exist. But if this collective self-devaluation story were a true fact, every drop of energy you use to create and sustain your body would have to be taken from someone else, which means they must lose. This is the deeper underlying self-devaluation that leads to most of the rest of our self-devaluation. This concept that I'm a zero-sum energy body not connected to any benevolent life force outside my physical self, and therefore having to compete and earn and extract energy from outside myself, that concept is why there is so much devaluation. The fall from grace story becomes a story about having to fight and claw our way back into the Garden of Eden. And that devaluation of our society is how we learn to devalue ourselves early in life, but not know that we're doing that because it just looks like factual reality. The good news is the Garden of Eden is right here. When we fall from grace, we kick ourselves out of the Garden of Eden, but paradise itself didn't go anywhere, and it's still waiting right here, right now. It always has been. We just haven't been experiencing it most of the time because of our self-devaluation stories. Sure, the self-devaluation story was taught to us by almost everyone we've ever met since the day we were born. Sure, almost everyone firmly believes it. But as Mahatma Gandhi pointed out, even if the whole world believes something, that doesn't make it true. This has been Mind Over Symptom with Lishwi Springford, where symptoms are not the enemy and you are your own authority. For more, visit mindtreehealth.co.